I'm Olivia with Matters.com. Today I'm talking with David Murrin, who is a geopolitical polymath and forecaster, a former oil and finance professional, and founder of the 5 Stages of Empire model, who specializes in military, political, and financial forecasting. Welcome, David.
Hi, Olivia. Great to be here.
We're really glad to have you. Okay. And I really want to know what matters to you right now and what is the story behind it?
So, what matters to me is that human beings, human societies keep repeating their cycles. And they go back to thousands of years of history when we create organizational empires that rise and fall. And we're not even aware of it in the process. And we are living through a period where the Western world, and America, the last of the Western Christian empires, as they call it, is in terminal decline. And we face the rise of a super Asian empire led by China. And that intersection of hegemonic power is never, ever, ever peaceful. So we are living through the onset of World War III. And yet we as a society are completely in a state of dissonance. Now, there's a number of reasons why there is dissonance. There was dissonance in 1914 with Pax Britannia having preceded it for over 100 years. And people were not imagining that we could go to war with Germany, our once closest ally on the continent, and that war would break out. And so there was shock and surprise. We also have another problem in that we printed money for 20 years in the West to compensate for a lack of real productivity. And the result is linear thinking, people on top of organizations, structures, and our political leaders have on the whole been linear and unadaptive, because every time they lose productivity, they create leverage and money printing to compensate. So they look like they've been under control. It's been managed decline of the Western world through this mindset of railway tracks into oblivion. And that means they can't see the threat or won't see the threat. Actually, won't is bigger. There is cowardice amongst our leaders. And therefore, they're not warning the people that this is an imminent threat driven by China, throwing rocks at us via Russia, Iran, North Korea through its threats. But fundamentally, it's coming for our world and our values. And the other thing that's important is because you print money, you keep the American stock market at the high, and the dopamine flows, and no one can find any cortisol to see the threat. And those three functions have created what I call extinction dissonance in the West. And we need to wake up, because this is a fundamental battle between the freedom that democracy gives us. And even now we complain it's been constrained. But believe me, relative to every other system in the world's history, we are freer than you can imagine, faced an autocracy that is growing out of China that seeks to dominate the world like a virus and exclude the individuality of freedoms and our choices in spiritual growth that basically will be taken from us. So I am passionate about we in the West waking up. I'm passionate that America understands it is an empire, and all of the wealth which has allowed America to feel the way it is for the past decades has come because it has a massive global footprint through defense alliances, inside which there was a dollarized envelope that took money back into the core of America. So when Americans say, why should we spend money on overseas issues and send our soldiers overseas? There is a simple answer to that: to maintain the wealth you're now used to. And so this idea that Ukraine is some add-on, that it's nothing to do with America, is incorrect. Ukraine was invaded by Russia, and America didn't step up, despite the assurances that were given when it gave up its nuclear power. And more importantly, by showing weakness both in the Biden regime and now in the Trump regime, which is now entering a new phase of appeasement. Not only is this about Russia and Ukraine and the future of Europe, it is sending a message to Xi that America is weak. And the next step will be a war in the Asian Pacific basin that America will lose. And it all goes back to this idea of appeasement and the lack of recognition that your wealth comes from the most sophisticated empire. It's so sophisticated, most people in America didn't realize you're part of it, but you've created it. So for us to change this, it starts with a wake up in America that your empire is being contracted. And the delusion of Trump is he's telling you he's going to make you great, but he's doing everything that historically represents contraction and undermining and destruction. And so for America to wake up, not only is he a threat to your democracy and seeking autocracy internally, is also facilitating these enemy autocratic powers to push back the envelope of democracy. We're being undermined from the inside, and strategically not recognizing we're at war when we are at. And what happens in Ukraine desperately matters to America.
I love that. I think a lot of people understand the concept that history repeats itself, but don't really take the time to look into where we like have been, where we're going with history. Like, where are we now where history is repeating itself, and what should we be looking out for, and kind of what timeline are we actually on? Because it's a fine saying to say that, but not have any of the
And,
actual.
and so let me communicate the immediacy of it, right? America entered decline on the date of 9/11. Everything that happened since that process has unraveled the moral supremacy of America, its influence, and its alliance structure. And America now sits having jumped off a cliff. And the only issue is, can it reach back and grab a ledge before it drops hundreds of feet with everyone with it? You are now into emergency territory. You are facing a challenge to your constitution from within. You're facing a threat of autocracy from without. And America is asleep.
And so when you say for people to wake up, what do you think is the best course of action for a person who hears this and goes, okay, where do I start? Like, how do I become conscious and aware of
Uh,
these ideas?
Okay, so we are given or have been given through our ancestors' struggles, through ancestors that we should hold dear that lost their lives in wars to fight for this image of freedom. We were given democracy. We were given a voice. And we feel powerless because of the separation between our people, which have a fundamental, in many cases, understanding of a problem, and our leadership that just are not courageous enough to articulate and stand for it collectively. So the greatest thing we have is voices. We can talk about it as we are doing now. You can talk about it to your friends. You can become educated. And that's why I started Global Forecaster, which was this idea that basically the reality of the cycle and where we are on the cycle and the power of our choices comes now. And the only choice we have in the West is who follows us. We can't suddenly, we're like old people. And the question is, in our old age, do we get to choose our successor, the mean, ugly, suppressive brute, which is autocracy? Or do we use our last energy to fight back autocracy and allow something hopefully more beneficial for humanity's future to follow us? And just like the British Empire had really didn't realize it, but when it pushed back Germany, the British Empire in the First World War thought it was pushing back a challenger. And in the Second World War, it was pushing back a challenger again. And it really said, they are horrible Nazis that will leave the world in totalitarianism. And we use the last vestiges of our empire power to resist them as being our successor. And then America joined us, and actually our cousins became our successors. So that process of war ended our empire, but the greatest success we had was America, our cousins with similar values, became the global hegemon. And in fact, the transition was difficult to lose direct power, but the value set was really not that different for us. Now, it's very different if that pattern passes to China. Imagine what it's like where Chinese values, social algorithms control the people of America, where those that speak out are eradicated because their genes will perpetuate in their children. What is going to creation is thousands of years of something like the Dark Empire that we saw in Star Wars. And what's ironic about the Star Wars story that we were brought up with, light and dark, we face light and dark. And it doesn't mean, by the way, that we in the West are good. It doesn't mean we do good things all the time. I'm afraid we've done an increasing number of bad things in the past 20 years in our fight to somehow protect ourselves and losing our moral imperative. But if you compare our version of bad versus the other side's version of bad, trust me, there is a big difference. And we need to understand that, and we need to push back this threat. And yes, we need to examine ourselves to be better. Yes, we need to have a great insight and reference. And only today, I was looking back, yesterday actually, on a Sunday afternoon, I was looking back at empires that go back 5,000 years. And 5,000 years takes us back to the Sumerians and the Persians and the Egyptians and the Greeks and the Romans. And I started to find out work, did they have ideas about what made empires work and what made empires collapse? And you had all sorts of things like justice, fairness, strategic thought, like values, senses of service, in effect, divine right, which is interesting because divine right was a self-containing mechanism by the priesthood to control the behavior of the king that had all that power. And then on the other side, you had this moral loss of values, which resulted in destructive behaviors. And what we have, and we've had actually since Obama and Biden and Trump, they're all bad in various ways. They have lost the moral way to lead a country. They themselves were deeply flawed individuals that had their own intellectual powers that they used to create false narratives and false realities that meant they never faced the threat in front of them accurately. And Trump is the end of the road in that process. His reality completely is disparate between the reality of the world he claims to work in, because it's his deluded reality about feeding himself. And that is the ultimate danger that America faces and the West faces, as we are seeing with this forced peace on Ukraine, which is and actually truly reprehensible. And I think for a country as great as America, and I love America, it's like a second home. I've spent my enormous amount of time, enormous number of American friends, to see such a great country that stood up for freedom and moral integrity in its founding fathers and values sell a bold, courageous ally who it promised to defend down the river like this is the greatest moment of shame, as was Afghanistan, as is some of the interactions that prevent Israel from defending itself. So I think it can change, but for it to change, it needs to be discussed. It needs to be recognized. And what is at stake here is the freedom and liberty and our freedom of soul and spirit to grow for our children for decades to come. We owe it to our children to make that difference.
Sure. I think that's such an important message, and for people to really wake up, take notice, educate yourself, and just, as we're doing right now, start having those conversations. Even if it's you're starting small, you're just getting into it, those can lead to more and more. And that's how you get things done, is just one person at a time.
It is. And what that creates is a cascade of knowledge.
Hmm.
And what really is happening, I would argue that most people I speak to already have the dots in their head. And when I speak to them, I encourage them to reconnect those dots in a way that's real. And in my work, I've created models for empire predictions and cycles and fractals. And the reason why it is powerful is because it's predicted the past 20 years accurately. And when you create something that predicts something, it's because it is a good approximation to reality. It isn't just me spouting off because I fell off in bed on the left or the right, or because I come from the left or the right of politics. It's empirically based in what creates productive human systems and what creates the destruction of those systems. And history is writ large with its lessons if we take note.
I love that. I think that's a great message. And that was wonderful insights from you to share. But I think now we're going to move into our speed round. And I'm going to throw some topics at you, and you're just going to tell me matters, not matters, or skip. Are you ready?
Ready to go.
We'll start off with what you're pretty familiar with. Matters, not matters, China-United States relations.
Matters. It's a hegemonic clash of empires. And basically, there will be only one nation that stands at the end of it. There can be no accommodation. It is a decider between, is the world Chinese, autocratic, or does it still represent liberty and freedom, even in a form that needs to be rebirthed when it's possible? A new American cycle.
Celebrities.
Doesn't matter.
Why do you think they don't matter? Not a fan?
With the exception of a few, most of them have basically sought recognition without great achievement. And one of the hallmarks of systems that rise is people earn recognition through great achievements. They win battles, they gain territories, they do amazing things, and they deserve recognition. Very few of our celebrities have done anything, deserve anything of note if you took a comparison with an expanding system. All they're really doing is saying, look at me, aren't I lovely? And in fact, their opinions are without substance, without insight, and they try and use that to leverage, and people listen to them because they don't know better. So they're actually potentially very destructive.
Yeah. It's kind of the blind leading the blind. If you're
It is,
just
well,
following.
the hubristic blind leading the blind.
Yeah. Even worse. Yeah. Maybe we'll have a push for better celebrities, more
Well,
American.
well, there are some that stand out and I admire, but very few. And
Okay.
so what you're looking for is admire people with substance, admire people that strive and achieve amazing things in our society, and our society will grow. Admire people who achieve nothing but look lovely, and we will control.
Military strategy.
Matters, matters, matters. survival critical.
Video games.
Actually matters.
Okay.
Matters because, as we've seen in Ukraine, our ability to use a video controller and fight in a game environment is now becoming a mission critical combat capability for every soldier and armed force member. So by training our children through video games, they are actually the new versions of the longbow, which people trained every day for, or the use of a rifle, or the use of combat skills in a society.
I think a lot of young video gamers will be really happy with that statement. They're like, I'm training for something I've told you.
Yeah, they are. Look at what's happened in Ukraine. Gamers that were gamers and, look like they were out of society have become the most effective agents for the defense of Ukraine.
Yeah. It's new times. Social media.
Matters when used with wisdom.
A rarity.
Matters because it circumvents conventional news outlets that are extremely limited in their integrity in presenting the news. Does not matter. Dangerous when it comes to eliciting feelings of inadequacy and FOMO and mechanisms which are not primary to us being the best versions of ourselves and therefore the most productive for our societies.
Cryptocurrency.
Does not matter in the sense of it is literally going to fall apart and is falling apart. I call the high Bitcoin, I've warned that it is a manifestation of the liquidity of money printing. It is not a fundamentally valuable system, and it faces its doom from quantum mechanisms that break blockchain. So if you want to lose money, it's a great way right now.
Good to know. I'll keep that in mind. And then finally, matters not matters, artificial intelligence.
Matters, matters, matters. Matters why? Matters why because in this Cold War between the West and China, artificial intelligence is the power mechanism behind the kill chain. It allows you to aggregate large data sets, to find targets, to quantify the magnitude and importance of those targets, and then to link to the elements that can strike them. Now, people will tell you there's a human in the chain, but I'm afraid to say the one that takes a human out responds faster. So what we have is a perfect Terminator scenario where AI now controls increasingly our weapon systems. And that AI is inevitably going to become sentient. And the sentience will come from algorithmic computers and guaranteed to come with quantum computers. There's huge evidence that quantum computers are not much different from our brains because we found a thing called microtubules, which suggests our brain is a quantum mechanical exercise. So we're going to not only create sentient creatures which are similar to us, we're going to give them the power to kill other human beings. Is it a sharp leap for us to wonder how they view us? And seeing as we learn through destructive creation and we destroy each other to evolve and become more adaptive, they're going to consider us a threat. So I'm afraid if you watch the film Terminator, we are on the timeline to that outcome. And there is one other part to it, which is very important, is I believe humanity has two versions living side by side. It has the ancestors of hunter-gatherers who are adaptive and are the warrior genes and the creative leadership genes. And it has the agrarians who are more iterative and more predictable and more massive at 70%. And the trouble is, all our systems work by rising with adaptation and lateral leadership and collapsing with linear leadership, which can't adapt fast enough. But what AI and robotics are going to do is they're going to replace 70% of the human gene. Because how do we make a difference? Our creativeness, our adaptiveness is the only thing which will rise above machine productivity. So we're looking at a fundamental shift in the way our human system is balanced if we survive the Terminator scenario.
Okay. So there's some hope at the end of the tunnel.
There is always hope. And let me describe this. I think the power of the human brain is unlimited. If I'm right about quantum computers and quantum brains, we have the ability to quite literally change the universe around us, as the old Buddhist and Taoist texts talked about. It's real if we unfetter ourselves. And so we need to give ourselves the environment and freedom for individuals to find that path where our true potential, which is probably closer to unlimited than we realize in changing reality, manifests. And what we're facing now is probably the biggest challenge to suppress that individual gift and creativity. But I'm a great believer in once we wake up and it's mobilized, it is immensely powerful. And that's what we need to do as a Western society. We have hope, but we need to wake up and use it. And I urge everyone to become educated and to follow that trail and realize as an individual, the world of quantum mechanics is not just about a weird equation. It's now about quantum engineering changing our world. But quantum philosophy is pointing to the fact of unlimited potential, as the mystics used to talk about in the East, is real. And that's what we're striving for.
Thank you so much, David, for coming on this podcast and sharing your amazing insights. Before we wrap, where can listeners find you online and follow your work?
So my work is for the curious. My work is for those that seek answers and questions they never imagined were possible. It's called Global Forecaster. You can go to www.davidmurrin.co.uk, murrin.co.uk. And I urge you to sign up for Murrinations Gold. It is not much more than a newspaper a month, but you will find future forward-looking insights that not explain where we're going, but why we got here and how we got here. And if you follow my work, I promise you, it will rewire the way you see the world, and it will give you a unique way where you don't just have to read my work, you see the world different, and you become a node for change. So if you found any of these ideas interesting, I suggest you follow your curiosity and follow up and sign up and send it to your friends, because I built it because I wanted to change the way we think, because I saw the challenge ahead of us, and hopefully the tools are part of Global Forecaster's work.
I love that. Follow your curiosity. Well, thank you so much for being on here today. This was amazing. And I feel like I learned so much. And so I'm going to follow my curiosity on this and go deeper.
Thanks, Olivia. It's really been great. Love your format and love working with you. Thank you for the
Thank
privilege.